Good afternoon and welcome again to Elevating the Conversation. My name is Paul Reed and I'm honored to serve as publisher of the Journal of Business. I'm so thankful that every month so many of you choose to join us for 45 minutes for some great conversations about things happening in our community. You know, we started this series of programs almost 2 years ago because you asked us for a venue to have important conversations about issues facing the business community. And we've had some great guests, including people like Stephanie Curran, Frank Velasquez, Shelley O'Quinn, Jim Frank, Steve Scranton, Larry Crowder, Chef Chad White, and many, many others. Next month, we have Tom Simpson, CEO of Ignite Northwest, for a great conversation about Spokane's entrepreneurial ecosystem. But today, we're very pleased to have with us Sarah Carlson, founder of Fulcrum Financial Group, for a discussion about retirement trends and challenges. Many of us look at retirement from two distinctive perspectives. One, helping our parents on their path in retirement, and second, preparing for our own, some of us sooner than others. Either way, it's a complex landscape with plenty of challenges and pitfalls. This should be a very compelling discussion. But before we get to that, I want to thank STCU for sponsoring this month's Elevating the Conversation. We simply don't get to do these kinds of things without the great support of some fantastic partners. And STCU is certainly one of our most prominent partners, not only with the Journal of Business, but throughout the community in the discussions they sponsor. Thank you, STCU. So let's get to that conversation. But first, let's take a look at this.
Ready or not, winter has arrived in the inland Northwest. And if the early weeks of the season are any indication, it's going to be a long one. Skiers and ski resorts are happy, while many snowbirds are preparing for their annual exodus. As we near the new year, many questions about what lies ahead persist. What will happen with inflation? Is a recession imminent? How will the housing market respond? Many unknowns remain on the horizon. But here in the inland Northwest, we aren't afraid of a little adversity. We are nothing if not resilient, resourceful, and perseverant. At the Journal of Business, we endeavor to keep you, our readers, informed about what's happening in your community. Our staff is dedicated to providing you with objective information on news and trends, with the goal of helping you be more successful on your chosen path. It's time to go beyond the sound bites. It's time for more depth than 140 characters can provide. It's time for Elevating the Conversation. Welcome to Elevating the Conversation. My name is Lynn Parrish. I'm the editor of the Journal of Business. I'll be your host for the next 45 minutes. I'm happy to be joined today by Sarah Carlson, owner of Fulcrum Financial Group and new author, right?
I'm a new author,
Facing Financial Fears, 8 Steps to Financial Freedom for Women.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I even brought a copy of the book.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that more here in a little bit. But, I'm glad we had this talk scheduled for this month, because one of the things that happens with these every once in a while is that the dynamics in the market will change from the time we schedule them to when they actually occur. So in late 2021, when we were talking about retirement trends and challenges, it was a little bit different stock market than it is today. So how would you characterize the market as it stands right now?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And you're so right, because when we set up this initial session, it was in the summer, and so much has happened since then. So the market is certainly very dicey, and there continues to be a lot of influences that is really shaping things, and things are moving fast. I mean, certainly there's the 3 I's, I like to say: interest, inflation, and invasion.
Sure.
Since the beginning of the year, interest rates have gone up significantly, which certainly makes it tough on borrowers. Inflation, that's the one thing that we all see every day, whether you're buying milk or gas or overall cost of everything seems so much higher than most people have ever experienced in their lives.
Sure.
And then, of course, the invasion. The invasion certainly weighs on emotionally all of us, as well as helps to disrupt the supply chain. Certainly, it's forced energy in a new level of scrutiny and price range, and certainly higher energy prices transcends throughout the system. And it's not just the US, it's global.
Right. I mean, I talked to one economist recently who said it's actually been a little bit easier on the US than it has been on European countries, for example, who were not officially into a recession yet, but in all likelihood have seen contraction in their economies. So the US is actually in a little bit better shape than some of our allies.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of portfolio managers, I hear refer to it as the US is the best dirty shirt in the dirty laundry basket.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stains and difficulty out there, and the US definitely, as tough as it is, there's lots of parts of the world that are just a whole lot worse off.
Yeah. The cleanest shirt in the laundry basket,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
dirty laundry basket. I like it. Yeah. So I think what would be helpful, because you've been in this industry, you've owned Fulcrum for over 25 years, and you've been in the industry for longer than that. So you've been through a number of economic cycles in your career. How would you characterize this one in the context of others that you've experienced?
That's a great question, Lynn. There have been so many pullbacks. I've been in the industry over 30 years. I founded Fulcrum Financial Group 25 years ago. Whenever there's a pullback, it's never comfortable.
Sure.
And yet it's with this current pullback that we keep talking about, but the data hasn't shown that it's here.
Not yet.
That's the big looming tension that we have. But if you think about it, a lot of what we're experiencing is because of the pandemic and the government putting incentives in place, whether it was giving checks out, PPP loans, keeping interest rates artificially really low. So we had so much cash in the system. And then with COVID, the supply chain tightening up, and you just have more money chasing less things. Inflation is a result. So much of it is normal, and a recession is a normal economic cycle after a point of expansion.
Sure.
We had one not too long ago. We were at the beginning of the pandemic. We technically were in recession, and I don't know if you remember, it went down very fast, and it also came up very fast.
Sure.
Any recession is really the depth and breadth of how long it lasts. And of course, the one thing we all want to avoid is a depression.
Sure. But even if you compare this to the Great Recession that we all experienced in the late 2000s, how would you relate this to that?
We're nowhere near that. So in 2008, there was some real systemic toxic debt in the system that created a lot of problems and a domino effect. This recession, we don't have that at all. The consumer is very strong, and certainly the job markets. I mean, despite all the recent layoffs, we're still technically growing in terms of jobs, and a lot of the portfolio managers refer to what's going on in the consumer, because the consumer appears to be strong. They talk about revenge spending, where they're going to go out and have that vacation. They're going to buy that car because they're unleashing, right? After being not allowed to do a lot of those things over the last few years.
Yeah. So with the economic situation that we're in now, whether it's a mild recession on the horizon or a soft landing, as I've heard said, what are some factors that could either shorten that period of pullback or
perhaps make it more lengthy.
Right. Well, the looming recession, I mean, if it is in fact here, I mean, one of the things that is going to strongly dictate how long it lasts is what goes on with the Fed and how much more they potentially hike the interest rates up. We're now, I mean, 7.5%, 8%. A lot of people feel will go to 10%. That's scary for the investment markets.
Sure.
Just recently, Powell has indicated he's going to level, and that was a sign that some of his monetary policy is working to help cool things off. But people forget that real wealth is made in recessions and depressions. It's not made when everything's booing up. It really is made when things are more challenging, because the people that took risk and maybe put a lot of leverage in their investment deals, they have to unwind those. And sometimes those people have to end up selling assets lower than they would otherwise. And it's people that don't use leverage and have cash or resources on the sideline are able to get a better buy. And so that's true in the real estate market, buying businesses, debt, stocks, across the board.
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it, for sure. I wanted to go through a couple of outside factors that are affecting the investment market right now. You've talked extensively about inflation and interest rates, which are really married at the hip, like attached to the hip, right? And so, but there are a few other things that are happening right now. Let's hit on the first one that you alluded to earlier, which is invasion. I think that from what we're hearing, what's happening in the Ukraine is having a much more profound effect on the world economy than maybe many of us realize.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if anything, psychologically, certainly makes people more apprehensive.
Sure.
But probably the biggest factor is energy. And certainly Europe is feeling it even more so than we are. But energy prices, if you think about everything from heating the homes to transporting goods, that is a direct influence on how difficult it is to afford to pay for those things.
Sure.
So, yeah, definitely, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And then a couple other kind of jumping around a little bit, talking about the tech jobs. So we've seen some announcements of pretty big layoffs with some well-known tech companies. What effect does that have on the investment market when you're talking about that sector?
Right. There have been a lot of changes in recent months, and mainly from managers and business owners anticipating a slowdown. And so laying off jobs in the tech sector was the one that had some of the biggest expansion and growth, and the first to pull back. The job market continues to remain strong. There's definitely going to be a shift more to vocation type of positions, and certainly as the pandemic showed how vulnerable we are as a country to the supply chains, and certainly on how dependent we are on China, and from national security, that's causes some concern. So I think you can see other types of jobs growing, even though tech may perhaps be pulling back. But tech is here to stay. I mean, it's revolutionized. I mean, just look at the workforce. People are working from home. There's so much that we're not going back to the way we used to be in so many different areas.
Of course. Last one in that group that I wanted to talk to you about before we get into some questions about advice, investment advice, cryptocurrency. So we've seen some pretty big developments in that field, and I'm wondering, do you feel that in other investment categories or circles, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, cryptocurrency is very controversial.
Sure.
It's not regulated, and it's not a registered investment.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that fascinates me with crypto is, I mean, it's a computer system program, but there's over 4,000 different cryptos. And
Yeah.
as an investor, I think it's always reasonable to understand what you're investing in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're buying stock in McDonald's and McDonald's goes under, you still have the brick and mortar of McDonald's to fall back on, or
Sure.
their processes, their intellectual
There's
property.
tangible assets there.
Right.
Yeah.
Tangible assets.
Yeah.
In crypto, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Munger, he recently, he's a big critic of cryptocurrency,
Mm-hmm.
and he wonders, like, how can we as a society allow that when it's the main source of currency for nefarious activities,
Sure.
like human trafficking.
Sure.
And that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, some ethical concerns there for sure.
Yeah, and the head of JP Morgan, he came out just recently and equated crypto coins to the new pet rock. Do you remember? It was the pet rock. You could buy a little toy, a little boxed rock. I thought that was hysterical.
Yeah.
That just made me laugh.
Yeah, certainly not a place you want to be putting your money.
Yeah, if people come to me and want to do crypto, they can do that on their own. I don't, being a registered professional, help people invest that way.
Sure. So a few questions about advice for people who are in different scenarios in terms of retirement. One is clients who are either recently retired or approaching retirement in the next year or so. What advice do you have for them, and what kinds of conversations are you having with those folks?
I like that question because that is the group of people that is being hit the hardest with what's going on
I
in
can
the market.
imagine. Yeah.
It's pretty scary when suddenly you see your nest egg pull back, 20% or more, and you're getting ready to retire. So we're having a lot of conversations with people and revisiting overall strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe money doesn't solve many problems, but good advice does.
Mm-hmm.
And so helping people understand what their options are, revisiting their planning goals, looking, is it necessary that they maybe consider working a little bit longer, or perhaps revisit their cash flow? There's also, when there's a market pullback, there's always opportunity for things like a Roth conversion. People can convert some of their retirement account to a Roth and pay the taxes now, and then have that bucket to grow tax-free in the future.
Sure.
And then certainly looking at strategies pulling from Social Security and other type of pensions is it's worth doing some planning and taking a look at the different what ifs.
Sure.
So many times those kind of planning techniques can build comfort when people realize, okay, I'm still fine, I can meet my goals. That's helpful. And it's also helpful if you have time on your side, like, okay, now I can take advantage, and maybe I do have to work a little bit more, but I'm getting a better buy for those investment dollars.
Sure. What about someone with a longer time horizon, someone who's maybe 15, 20, 25 years out? How are those conversations different, and what advice do you have for those folks?
Yeah, any kind of market pullback for those people, what's going on is a real blessing, because it allows them to accumulate more of what they need. I like to kind of equate it, if you think of like things you need to live on, or things you're going to value, if you equate it to like a can of tuna,
sure,
you buy it one can at a time, yet when the cost of tuna goes down 50%, would you load up on the can of tunas? things are on sale, and people don't look at investments in that filter.
Sure.
But they should, because you can acquire more for that same investment dollar than you could before. We're all caught up in herd mentality. So it's like when things are going up, we're like, oh, I got to jump onto that.
Sure.
We don't think of it when things pull up back and there's more fear in the market, that that's actually a real opportunity for someone that has the ability to put in assets.
Sure. Because for those of us who are just kind of average working folks, and we have a 401k, when we're putting the exact same amount in that 401k each pay period, correct me if I'm wrong, we're getting more for that amount when the market's down, greater shares in those mutual funds or whatever the investment is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're dollar cost averaging, and that's one of the
Right.
best ways that you can make money off of volatility, is systematically adding to your investments. So like in your 401k, you have a payroll deduction, your employer sends it in, and you're buying those shares systematically. You can do that outside of your retirement as well.
course.
Great
Sure.
way to accumulate wealth. Good
Yeah.
job, Lynn.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but thank you. So let's talk about your book real quick, and then we'll get to, I think we have a question or two. So how did you come to the decision to write it, and what are you hoping to accomplish with it?
Thank you for asking about the book. So the book, Facing Financial Fears, 8 Steps to Financial Freedom for Women. It's the title has women in it. It's really a book for men and women. I'm hoping to bring touch the feminine side of investors in their finances. I believe people can go from fear to joy through some curious steps, and so it's financial advice. It helps. It's a whimsical story of helping the reader feel empowered. It scares them a bit, but takes them to a place where they can see measurable, actionable steps to their goals.
Great. How's the response been to it so far?
I'm blown away. We've made the Amazon bestseller list. I'm just so touched. I wrote the book as a way to touch more people than I could through our practice and individual coaching. I've seen so many ordinary people live extraordinary lives, and wanting to touch more people. So I've had this book inside me. I feel like I've literally given birth to this book for almost my whole life. I've been working on it for the last 5 years, and I'm really proud of the final product, and to have it so well received just feels really nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's see. I think we have a question, maybe two. Paul?
Yes, we have a question from Jane Bueller, and it relates a little bit to a question you had already asked, Lynn, about the tech market. But her question is, the tech market is laying off, but it appears the manufacturing space is ramping up. What are you seeing across all spaces within the manufacturing sector?
I think that's a good question, and we touched upon it a little bit earlier, that I think there's going to be more and more small businesses, medium and even large size business, that there'll be more things coming back to the US and more diversification, especially in tech and certainly healthcare too. It's interesting talking to property managers and people in the real estate market that a lot of those companies are buying projects that will allow them to build facilities. So that's an exciting offshoot of all this.
Sure. We're going to be seeing a lot of development there.
Yeah.
Or investment, rather. Well, thanks so much. Any parting thoughts for you, Sarah?
Well, I think it's really important that people realize, as scary as it can be turning on the TV and seeing like the negativity, I think people need to remember there's so many amazing things going on. And certainly if you look at the quality of life we all share it's so much higher than it has been at any time in history. And I would encourage your viewers to find the good. There's so much good out there. Find the good in what's going on.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Sarah. Sure do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lynn.
And
Thanks for
thank
having
you,
me.
of course. Thank you for joining us. Please join us again on December 14th when we'll have Tom Simpson talking about Spokane's entrepreneurial ecosystem. Say that fast 5 times. Until then, stay safe and we'll see you soon.